Okay, welcome. So glad you all could come tonight. So why don't we start with a meditation? As you begin, imagine a simple little string, a simple piece of string, and it's threaded through the eyelets of a purse. And as you pull the string, of course, the purse closes. So think of all those little eyelets as your thoughts. And as you pull on the one little string, it pulls all of your thoughts together so close and so tightly that thinking is no longer possible. Just sensing. Just intuition. It's like looking at your thoughts as one looks at clouds way above your head, just floating by. You can see them, but you're not affected by them, for you are more than your thoughts. And as we sit together collectively, we choose to raise our vibrations, we choose to enter into a superconscious state where thinking comes last. And our higher sense perceptions, our intuition, comes forth very powerfully, reminding us that at the center of our being is pureness and love. Always and forever in the center of our being is pureness and love. Whole and complete. You are whole and complete. And may the principles of harmlessness and compassion be the ever-present guide of your every intention, your every thought, and your every action. And so it is, and so it shall be. It is done. And breath in gently, and breath out. Again, breath in gently, and breath out. Feeling content, focused, and grounded. And when you feel the moment is right, open your eyes. So we have an opportunity tonight to have some discussion about spirituality and metaphysics. Part of my purpose in creating this evening is because I'm starting a new group of healers on August 22nd and 23rd. Spiritual healing for the whole human being means the four archetypes: mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional. And spiritual healing means not limited to time or space. So as you know, there are many, many types of healing. Feldenkrais, craniosacral, Reiki, reflexology, acupuncture. There's a million names for healing. All healing, no matter what type of healing it is, only boils down to one thing. Healing is overcoming any illusion that separates you from the oneness in which you already live. There is no separation. So every person externalizes their method of healing. Someone says, oh, only if I go to iridologist, only that person can help me. So then you externalize an iridologist that comes and says, oh, your family and your parentage and this types of food and so forth. Or the person says, nope, only spiritual counseling or only acupuncture. But they all lead to the same place. All human beings have this capacity to manifest. The reason for that is because the soul quality is you. It's you on a higher level of yourself, not limited to space or time. And that soul quality radiates through what we call the chakras. Now, in a group like this, I can assume all of you pretty much know what the chakras are. When you're in a group of spiritualists, it's, oh yes, we know. Dr. J, we know exactly what those are. We know everything from soup to nuts. So as a spiritual being, a luminous being of light that is not subject to space or time, we also radiate just like a star radiates light into this dimension that holds this body, these 60 to 100 trillion cells, in this configuration you see in the mirror every morning. And the chakras are the conduits by which you observe that image. The chakras come and they radiate in 4 flavors: mental, spiritual, physical, and emotional. These are the 4 archetypes of a human being. You see the minor arcana of 56 cards divided into 4 suits. They are those 4 archetypes. So my work has been, ever since maybe the late 80s, in the depth of the chakras. And I had decided to write a couple of books about them because I had a very opinionated view of what I felt the chakras represented. So I'm very quick to say in these books that it's just my opinion. But I wanted to know, how is it that we even come to be in this dimension? So when spiritual healers training came along, it was to perform a type of healing in that, as you know the old time saying, a little oil sticks to your funnel because you're just the conduit, you're just the lens through which the light flows. But to understand how that flows through the chakras, and what are the chakras in terms of how they influence your personality. So imagine every human being has 7 chakras. All chakras are open, they're never blocked, they're never closed. All human beings are intuitive. But in this era, we really haven't promoted that so much. But we're living in an age that the ancients had talked about, which is the golden age, or the era of inner transformation, where we would become aware that chakras exist, that we would know factually, scientifically, that chakras exist. We know that the human body emits light, that it emits 100 to 1,000 times more light over a chakra center. We know that one person can send power to another regardless of the distance and make instant measurable changes. So when I was looking at the chakras and writing these books, I thought, okay, there's a way to teach this that shows how one person can send power to another, but also understand what they're doing. In other words, when one of my healers works on someone, they have to make assessments as well. Okay, this chakra is dominant, this one's weak, this one's strong, this one's erratic, and so forth. And as they make assessments, what the healer student is really doing is they're stimulating their own chakras, because they have to use their chakras to look at the chakras of the person on the table. So if I send you to the gym and have you do an arm curl, on day 1 you'll say, well, that Dr. J doesn't know what he's talking about. I've been here all day, nothing's happened. Yeah, one day, but what would happen to your arm after 10 months of doing this exercise, right? So spiritual growth is a lot like going to the gym. Over time, the physical mind integrates the spiritual power, or the higher awakening of the soul, as it infuses into the physical mind. So when you send a power to someone, it's not the same thing as like a Reiki or the Chi treatment. The power through the chakras is a kind of a consciousness. So for instance, if you send the power through this chakra here, this is called the throat, or Vishuddhi, with a V like Victor, Vishuddhi. Vishuddhi means purification. And if you send a power through this chakra, it can help change the way a person even thinks, how the mind even works. If you send a power through, say, the second chakra, the Svadhisthana chakra, you can help remove the tumor or the cancer from the body. So the chakras are not just power centers, although many of us use that term, energy, to mean like electricity is power or gasoline is power. It doesn't work that way. There's not where you have to put your hands out, although I like to use my hands because it helps my mind understand what I'm doing. It's more a kind of allowing the power to flow through you. And of course, in this setting, there's no problem to use the word God. But some people like Creator, some people like Divine Source, some people say the Ineffable, the All. But it's that potential of all purity and all love across all boundaries, where there's only oneness, no separation. So, over 16 years ago, I started teaching healers training. And now I have over 470 students and graduates in the U.S. and Canada in different groups. And I hope to start a good group here in August. But the way things are looking, it's already looking very good. But it takes time. It takes time. It's a 2.5-year course. It's 18 levels, and the course is taught on a weekend, 4 weekends a year. And then in between that time, you would be practicing with your group. But the reason why it takes at least 2.5 years is it takes time for the mind to understand the spiritual power that's awakening. So, again, to repeat myself, the way I'm teaching my students is they have to make assessments and do the energy work, because the way I teach is that the student is actually awakening their chakras so they can see the chakras of the person who's laying on the table or a remote healing or whatever that is. And so by making the assessment, it causes the student to bring that higher sense perception from the soul, or maybe even the monadic level, into this mind. It's called heaven and earth, not heaven on earth, because what you're actually doing is merging the physical and the non-physical together, and this causes changes in your own mind, even how the brainwave states are present. So, for instance, right now you'd be more in a beta state, maybe between 12 and 25 cycles per second. But if you were to close your eyes right now, you'd go into an alpha state, which is somewhere between 8 and 12 cycles per second. Deeper than that is theta. Deeper than that is delta. Well, people who awaken their spiritual state often go more into an alpha theta state all the time. They're not walking around like this, but they're more in a meditative state all the time. And so even though all brainwave states are present all the time, one becomes emphasized based on the state of consciousness of the person. So as the healers are doing their work, they themselves go through fundamental changes. And to be quite blunt with you, I've been telling my healers this year that really, and I don't mean any ego, I just see after so many years of training that the school should be 4 years, and then they should hang out with me another 3 years after that. Because it just takes a lot of time to go beyond a mental, intellectual concept of what spiritual healing is directly into an inner knowing. If it were shorter, that'd be great. The problem we have in our world today is rapid gratification, where I was saying, I coined my own word, the rapidifying of things. You know, what I joke about Reiki in a weekend, you know, where someone goes and says, and now I am Reiki master. And while that's a beautiful, beautiful thing and an excellent healing modality, in Tibet it takes 25 years to become Reiki master. So in truth, having worked with my teacher, I can tell you, for me, the training never ends. They have, in Japan, they have the Aikido, the Karate-do, the Kendo, but there's a word, I forget, there's a word that applies to all martial arts, and I forget the word, but it means relentless training that never ends. I wish I could remember the word. But anyhow, in order to take advantage of this era, which is the golden age, the era of inner transformation, my teacher would say, you can accomplish more in one lifetime than you could in 100 normal lifetimes if you choose a spiritual path. But because we all have incarnated in this age where there really is an alignment to the galactic center, where such alignments really reduce biologically and esoterically changes to the character of the human being, you can help a lot of people on the planet simply by evolving yourself. Mm-hmm. The way I like to put it is 95% of all communication is not verbal or physical, it's energy. So in your two strongest karmas, which are your parental karmas, you and your parents, you and your children, and then your familial karma, which is sisters, brothers, aunts, uncle, person you marry, extended family, as you grow in a spiritual way and evolve yourself, what you're really doing is dissipating your own karma. But by doing that, there's a law called representation through relationship, where the karmas around you have the opportunity to evolve. The hard part, you can do everything right, and it just doesn't make the person next to you do the right thing. And that's sometimes very hard for us when we work diligently at our spiritual practices, and then maybe we have a dear friend or some connection to a person, and we see them not making really good choices. So this is our opportunity to grow. So this is why you see me having a crazy schedule and traveling all over and doing all this work, is because I see the need for this kind of work. And a person asks me, they say, well, where did you learn how to do this? And 95% of this came from in here, not from any other teacher. No one taught me this form of teaching. It's something I've developed over the years. So what I wanted to do tonight was invite you to ask questions just about any topic, from the Mayan calendar to the Golden Age to the evolution of the sacred feminine to healer's training, as you wish. I'd like to make this your evening. Do you have any questions so far?
I have a question.
Yes, Julia.
So for the healer's training, I think I read that the public eventually gets to come for energy work?
Yes,
and
after
then,
level 6, then we can invite the public to come and we work on them.
I was just wondering how people hear about it, or do you advertise, or who comes?
Yeah, well, in the San Jose area, we advertise by Meetup, and then also on my website, and anybody who's on my constant contact email. And then, of course, there's always word of mouth. For me personally, I have found that print advertising sucks.
It does.
It really sucks.
It does.
And for me, word of mouth has been my most powerful advertising. So I'm not really good at other types of advertising, although I do have a radio program twice a month, and I do send out the occasional newsletter. And to your point, Julia, I have a wonderful assistant named Deirdre, and I brought on another assistant by the name of Erin, who is good at marketing, Facebook, social media, Twitter, that kind of thing. And I am not, but she is. So this is a way that we're putting the word out. And testimonials are always very good. I know, because we're a spiritual group, I'm okay to be a little more blunt with you. I do have testimonials from people who've instantly given up cancer, tumors, melanomas, pregnancy problems. I stopped publishing that stuff a while ago because I just didn't feel the need to. But I think we're going to bring some of it back out again, because I think it's good for people to see that not only is this possible, that it's extent, it's happening in the world. The problem we have is we tend to say, oh, only that person has a healing power. Only that person can do the work. And it's not true. Let me give you a silly example. With enough training, could you fix the engine on your car? If you had enough training, could you fix the engine on your car? Of course you could. So as your chakras awaken, your chakras contain the seeds of karma, but also the connection to higher states of yourself, superconscious states, which you are always in touch with. A great way to put it would be God broadcasts 24/7. We're just building better antennas to a broadcast that's already there. Because if you think about it, you live in a oneness, there's no place to go because you're already there. There's nothing to find because nothing's lost. We're just becoming aware. Think about it. 400 years ago, we discovered electricity, magnetism, and gravity. And instantly we realized, wait a minute, these forces have always existed, right? I mean, like magnetism always existed, only now I know, right? So the way the Indian culture puts it, there is a cycle of time called a yuga, 26,000 years. And we're entering what's called the Dwapara Yuga, which means the electrical age, or the age of subtle energy. It is intended that we know the subtle energies. So 400 years ago, those forces, electricity, magnetism, gravity, now chakras, meridians, long-distance healing or non-local healing, right? Quantum mechanics, how can an electron be in two places at the same time, and yet it is, right? But it's not a mysterious age. It's an age where it's intended that we know this because you and I are the ones who are externalizing this knowledge. It's not something that God's sitting over here saying, well, now I give this to you. It is a creative collaboration between you and God. You are now ready to know this. That's why you've incarnated in this age. And so if you say, like Yogananda would say, God loves to have his skirt tugged on by us. So if we go, well, God, I want to know, I want to learn, I want to know, you will always externalize from within yourself the means to emancipate you from any kind of illusion or from ignorance. Ignorance is simply the absence of knowledge, right? Mm-hmm. So it's called the exposition. You've been to expos before, right? Mm-hmm. Exposition means how it comes from the soul quality, you, to the surface of your mind, the cognitive state. The exposition of the soul quality is what we're doing in this room right now. Part of the point I really would like you to get is it's not me speaking to you, it's us working together. I'm just the guy speaking tonight. It could be maybe next lifetime you're sitting here and I'm sitting where you are. Who can say? So every person has a unique gift and a unique role. And as you awaken yourself, the karma begins to dissolve in each chakra, but your wisdom awakens. We call it the inner Christ, the inner Buddha, the inner knower. So within you is all knowledge, but it's not only an intellectual knowing. It is what the psychologists call the non-rational. It doesn't follow rational rules. That's why if you choose to be really, really good at what you do, like healing work or spirituality, you must have faith. It's almost impossible to grow spiritually without faith. Your reach must extend beyond your grasp. You cannot intellectualize a spiritual state. You have to surrender to your own power. Doesn't that sound crazy? You must surrender to your own power. Yes, sir.
I have a physical analogy. Being a paratrooper. No matter how much you learn about jumping out of an airplane, there comes a time when you actually have to do it.
Precisely. Or reading about golf as opposed to taking the club and swinging it. So this is where, if my teacher talks about the orange, he says, if I'm sitting with you and I'm the only one in the room who's ever eaten an orange, and I'm describing to you how cool it is, you can smile with me and cheer me on and intellectualize, but you don't know what an orange tastes like until you taste it. That's the difference between religion and spirituality. Religion is adopting a codified set of laws and beliefs as your own. Spirituality is the unique self-inner journey of knowledge within yourself. The most powerful way to achieve it, faith. And there is some rigor. There is some discipline to awaken the chakras. There is some work there to do. So by awakening the chakras and having a certain ferocity of faith, you awaken your spiritual nature. What's it worth to you? Well, it's going to bring up your stuff. Are you familiar with the word attrition? Mm-hmm. Okay, attrition is you start out with 10 students and then 3 students drop out of the college class. So, bless you. So in healer's training, there is some attrition. Because sometimes healers get to level 3, they get to level 4, and they go, oh, this isn't for me, or too much of my stuff came up, Dr. J, I don't want to do this. But the thing is that your stuff comes up because you're powerful enough to clear it. The thing about karma is it's not that your stuff comes up and you go, oh, another bummer. It's why the swamis and the gurus and the yogis say, be glad of your challenges, because what they're trying to say is you incarnate because you're strong enough to overcome the karma. That's why you bring it up. Now, it's easy for me to say, right? Unless you're the guy who's jumping out of the airplane, right? So every one of us has certain karmas that we bring up. But it's not always easy to look at it and go, oh yeah, this is just another test, no big deal. Until you're the guy going through the test, then it doesn't seem so easy, right? But that's, the Mayans have a term for it. They say the serpent will bite you. And to the Mayans, serpent means wisdom. It has nothing to do with snake. So the Mayan word for serpent is Kan. You ever been to Cancun?
Mm-hmm.
It means nesting place of the serpent. It's where the wise ones would gather. Hurricane. You know what the hurricane is? Right? You've heard hurricane? It comes from the Mayan hurrican. Hurrican means twisting serpent. So when the serpent bites you, is if you say, oh, I've reached a new level of compassion. And then tomorrow you get cut off on the freeway, your best friend insults you, you don't get the check you were expecting in the mail. And so the serpent comes and says, okay, you say you've reached a new level of compassion. You test yourself. The point I'm making is that you're always strong enough to meet the challenge. That's why the challenge is there as a creative collaboration with you and God, meaning you and yourself. It is you emancipating yourself. Most of us don't think that way. We've not been raised that way. But in my understanding, that's exactly how it works. The second thing about karma, beyond you create the circumstances because you're strong enough, is you never incarnate alone. You always bring other people into your life, like compatriots or spiritual people or the spiritual teacher. Maybe you bring a Yogananda into your life, right? Or a Yukteswar, or Pakal Bhutan, or the Dalai Lama. And as you connect to these fellow beings, they will choose to incarnate directly in a given lifetime when you do. And then you find them, quote unquote. There's no coincidence. There's no accident. You find them because there's a mutual collaboration between you and the spiritual teacher, because you're meant to work in that way, in what they call a dharma. Dharma means right action, right relationship, right behavior. So as you are more and more and more in your dharma, some karma will come up. In healer's training, it's like turning to face the wind. You're saying, yes, I would like to take the healer's training, but why does all this come up? Somebody brought a Costco pallet of stuff over and dropped it right in front of me. Yes, and you're strong enough. Not only that, but I can speak for healer's training, is the students don't realize that they've called each other. So let's say a group of 10 students who don't know each other come to day one of healer's training. But on some level of their being, they've already connected with each other to create a spiritual family. The Maharishi effect says that where two or more are gathered, the spiritual effect is exponential. So I've heard it said that the square root of 1% is all that's needed to affect the greater population. So what that means is if two people get together, it affects 400. Or in Fairfield, Iowa in the 70s, when 7,000 people got together, it affected 4.9 billion. And the next year, there was a 72% decrease in violence worldwide. And what were they meditating about? Decreasing violence in the world. So when you create any kind of a spiritual gathering, in my case, the healer's training, usually students don't think, oh, I created this group to work collaboratively in the Maharishi effect, where our cumulative effort would raise our consciousness exponentially than if I just did this on my own. Whatever spiritual group you choose, you are collaborating. So in other words, if I show up in your life, it's because you drew me into your life. If you showed up in my life, it's because I drew you to me. A lot of people don't think that way, and most people don't believe they have that kind of spiritual power to draw anything into their life they need so that they can externalize their own spiritual power. But that's exactly how it works. So the more ferocious that you are in your faith, the more you can create the means to emancipate yourself from illusion that causes unnecessary suffering, while awakening your higher sense perceptions and awakening your chakras as well, meaning your inner wisdom. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Are you glad it's being recorded? I know sometimes it's a lot, right? So this recording is yours. Just let me know and I'll Dropbox it to you, okay? Did I put batteries in? With a little wisdom, there could be some pain, so I'm known for my corny jokes, so you may experience some pain tonight as I attempt humor.
I have a question. With your students, where are they starting typically? Are they...
They are all walks of life. My youngest student was 19. My oldest is 80. Her name is Stephanie. She calls herself Stevie. She's a San Diego student. I've had blue collar, white collar, periodontists, psychologists, doctors, lawyers, just about every walk of life you can think of. Take my training. So yeah, anybody. People who don't even know what a chakra is, or people that have been in metaphysics for 20 years and they know it back to front. But what I found, and again, you're just listening to opinions, is that to truly awaken the spiritual power in a person is not an overnight thing. It takes time to integrate that level of power. So what I do is, you can see that I travel. Like I have 3 groups in Canada right now and 2 groups in San Diego. The Monterey group graduated here in March, and earlier this year there was a group that graduated in Calgary. So you can see I'm traveling around. She says, well, Dr. J's only here in San Jose on the weekend. Where is he during the 3 months I got to practice? And so you do have graduates in this area who will come to practice with you. But what I tell my students is I'll make myself available to you as much as I can. So I Skype in. You're familiar with the word Skype, right? The computer interface. So I make myself as available as I can. And I also have qualified graduates that are trained with me long enough that I trust to work with you as students. Because I prefer, you always to have some positive, helpful, strong guidance as you practice, because you're going to have a lot of questions. And we work in what I call the safety way. You don't work beyond the level with which you've been trained. If you're a white belt, you don't take on the black belt. It's not a good idea. Really not a good idea. You can, but
try. The
outcome you might not like. So it's like if you're on level 1 and you go, Dr. J, what's that critter swimming around in that person? I said, well, that's an entity, so maybe leave it alone or call someone like me. And that's the thing, too, is, I've had level 9 and 10 are about possession, and level 9 is called tube attachments, meaning how one person can possess another in an energetic way, like a manipulative way. And level 10 is elementals, entities, and demons, and demon removal. And I've had students go, tell me again what that level's all about. What is it? But
exorcism.
But what you're really doing is you're doing 2 healings. You're healing the person on the table and the possession. You're not just going, I cast thou out into thine fire. It's not doing any of that crap. You're actually allowing divinity of love to flow through you. And what you're really doing is when you take that possession out, you're allowing it to go to its next level of evolution. It's not what the movies say it is. It has nothing to do with that. But, halfway through healer's training, I do evaluations for all my students. Plus, I'm available whenever they need me. And I do an evaluation, say, well, here's how you're doing, here's how it's going. You're just about ready to take levels 9 and 10. Yeah, Dr. J, about levels 9 and 10. But if you weren't ready, I wouldn't let you take it. I mean, I have, over the past 16 years, had some students get to a certain level, and I said, I cannot teach you any further. Maybe practice for a year, and then we'll start again. Why? Because my number 1 priority is safety, the safety of the student. And there's a lot of people that assume they know what the spiritual growth is, but they don't. And believe me, I'm the last one to try to sound arrogant, but I've been doing this a long time, and the safety is my priority. So to grow in the safety way, you work at the level for which you've been trained, work with a qualified graduate or someone like me, okay, no problem. What I prefer is 10 practices in 3 months. So August 22nd, 23rd, we start levels 1 and 2. Level 1 is basic, and level 2 is about the human biofield, the aura. and then you would get together, hopefully, 10 times, and I have reflective practices for you. In other words, it's a log sheet, so you can log your time in, and then there's a form you fill out for your practice session. You know, what did you notice according to what you've been trained? And again, sometimes students freak out. They go, I have to write things down? I have to log my time? Well, yeah, well, my goal is to grant CEUs and then eventually grant degrees, so I have to start treating it more like, you know, we have work to do and we have to do certain things. The teachings often have some science in them. And the reason is because you and I are mostly Western. The Western mind is very reductionistic. And it means when we're empirically looking at something, I'm here, what I'm looking at is there. And so that's called separationism. So the Western paradigm is to use science to say, see when that needle moves? That means that's a chakra. But the science is an externalization of us so that we can overcome just the intellect to get to the point where we know there's more than just intellect. An example would be, we theorized that there was an atom going around in a circle around a proton or a neutron. Now we find there is no such thing. Well, then we thought, okay, well, let's break the atom down into subatomic particles called quarks, muons, gluons, leptons. And now the Large Hadron Collider has decided there's particles even smaller than that. There is no end. There is no smallest particle. Everything that exists is an emanation from a higher dimension into this dimension that holds it in space and time. And I'll show you that scientifically. But it's not a science lesson. It's just to show you that science is proving what the mystics have been saying for thousands of years. You know, that you really are a luminous being of light, that it really is true. But sometimes it's hard for us to accept unless I show you a little thing that says, well, you know, the human body emits light, 1 biophoton per cubic centimeter, but over a chakra center it's 100 to 1,000 biophotons per cubic centimeter. And you would say, well, what's a biophoton? It's a unit of light. But what it means scientifically is it's empirically, statistically significant that it's 100 to 1,000 times greater over a chakra center. You see, we can't measure the chakras directly because they're not limited to time or space, but we can measure their effect on our bodies. Micromotor muscle movements are about 200 cycles per second or so, but over a chakra center they might be 1,000, 1,200 cycles per second. So we know that chakras exist. That's no longer guessing or smoke and mirrors. But again, we can know scientifically everything about an orange, but we haven't jumped out of the plane yet. So the real work is when you surrender to your power. It may be one of the hardest things you ever do is admit to your power. Doesn't that sound silly when I say it? If I say to my healers, because you'll hear me talking a lot when you guys are working, because on day one you'll be up and working, but I'll be working on you. And I'll say things like, give yourself permission to be excellent at what you do. But my phrase, give yourself permission. Why? Because the ego is a dam, and it's holding back the true self. And as you release the dam, what do you think is going to happen to you? Flooding your conscious mind with higher states of being. You're not going to walk around like, dude, like totally I'm enlightened. It's not what it is.
Dude.
But the problem is, you know, we joke about it because it's so deep within us, it's very hard to externalize. Now, to teach metaphysics is not easy, because to teach about something that has no time or space as if it did, how do you do that? So my method is I construct a scaffolding in your mind. I give you some structure, and then I push you off of it. So students say, okay, let me get this straight. You're walking me up to a 1,000-foot cliff lined with glass, and you're going to push me off. I said, yeah, that's right, except when you get to the cliff, you'll find it's 6 inches high and it's lined with pillows. You ever try to get your teenager to clean their room? right? Takes all day for 5 minutes worth of work, right? So a lot of times students have trepidation because they're going, okay, I want to know what it's going to look like before I wake up and before I evolve and before I enlighten and reach Satori. I want to know what it looks like. You cannot. You cannot. You must surrender to your power. What happens when you pray for strength? Instantly you're put in weakness. Why? Because God sends you to the chakra gym. Here, you want to be strong? Here's the weights. Here you go. Here you go. Then after 10 months, right? So we work in the safety way in healers training. And mostly there are 2 levels in a weekend, although what I've done with level 3, which is all about the chakras, is I've made it a whole weekend. I've struggled because I've taught it as a 4-unit, 40-hour class at the master's and PhD level, so I could never get through a whole day. I might burn up 5 CDs of lecture. So that's a whole weekend. And the very last level, level 18, is karma and reincarnation. I used to teach that as the same type of a course. And I tried to do it in one day, but there's about 180 slides to go through. So a typical day is you're there in the morning and I will lecture and I record everything for you. I used to do CDs, but now I'm moving more towards just giving you files on Dropbox because try to go find blank CDs anymore. Then we break for lunch. And then typically in the afternoon, you're up and working on each other. As you say, until level 6, you just work on each other and you practice on each other. And then after that, we invite the public, which is kind of cool because we've had 34 people come over a weekend. And my healers are going, how many people are coming? A bunch. But it gives you practice of jumping out of the airplane. Different airplanes at different altitudes, right? You go, oh, this person's chakras have this disposition. Oh, this person's chakra, that's erratic. Or what is that? What does this mean? So when a person has a dominant chakra, it's like being right or left-handed. There's nothing wrong with your non-dominant hand, but it's not the one you use. So I'm right-handed. But if someone said, well, Dr. J, just sign your name with your left hand, you might not like what you see, but I could do it. It's just not the one I favor, although there's nothing wrong with my left hand. So when a chakra is dominant, that is the main lens through which you're looking at life, your perceptions. So if you have a specific perception, you're going to react in a certain way. But what happens if that lens of that chakra becomes cleaner and cleaner and cleaner? Your perceptions become much better, don't they? So you're trained how to look for the dominant chakra, how the other chakras are doing, but to make assessments and do healing work. So there's 2 parts, not one. You're not doing, okay, I did the healing work, thank you very much. Because I want you to be able to help that person on the table to empower their lives. Here's what's going on and why. Here's what you can do about it. Here's how to go about doing it. So now that person on the table has heard you say, oh, looks like the 3rd chakra is weak. That means maybe you are now in a power struggle with someone and your emotional loyalties are being tested. That's why you have so many dilemmas in your life right now, and you must choose for yourself, which will separate you from others. But by defining yourself, you're actually helping those people. So don't try to please those people anymore. So the person on the table goes, holy crap, how'd you know that? Well, because I can see your 3rd chakra very clearly and how it's doing. It's in its lower aspect. Oh, that's exactly what's going on in my life. So yes, you're doing energy work, but you do an assessment to help the person. Now, why do you have to do the assessment? Because it forces you to go up into a higher state and bring it into this mind. That takes work to interpret a higher state of consciousness and bring it into this mind and speak it. But what it does is the more you do it, the stronger you get, the more you merge your soul quality and sometimes the monadic quality with the physical waking consciousness more and more like this. And this is where your spiritual power awakens within you. What's one of the results? Very difficult to become manipulated as you awaken, because you can see the BS coming from a mile away. Will you still have lessons? Always. It would be like me saying, you'll never trip on the sidewalk again. Well, you might, because you might have that in your path. You have to learn that lesson no matter what I say, right? So we're still going to have challenges, but your ability to resolve the challenges, the way you choose to react and overcome your challenges will change significantly. You will not react the same way as you have before. And I invite you, if you would like to talk to some of the graduates and say, no, what's it really like? Right? I invite you to, because I know what it's like if you just talk to the teacher, right? You're going to get a certain point of view. But the real juice is in the people that's already taken the course, and so they know what it's like. Yeah, his jokes suck.
Just laugh.
Yeah, just ha-ha. Very funny.
I've had a couple of your healers work on me, and they were very good.
Yeah.
Accurate.
Yeah.
In their assessment. So.
Yeah, because they graduated in March, but we were working mostly out of CCL in the library. And we would have, of course, people come and get on the table. And so some of you have experienced that. These are some of the books. The blue one is The Eye of the Lotus. That's the first book. It's more about the definition of the chakras themselves. The second book is for level 5, called I Can Relate. It's more about how we relate to each other, chakra to chakra. That blue book there is actually published as a white one now. That's my copy from, I think, 1993. And that's required for level 18. So you've got some required reading to do for the course. I did bring some information packet. An information packet is 19 pages of here's what the course is, here's what it entails, and so forth. But if you want to download it yourself, you can just go to the website and print it off right off of the Healers Training page. Questions?
Where are you going to do it, the class?
Right here. Unless we get more people, then I'll have to figure that out, because CCL has a big thing happening on the 22nd. So it's better for me because I bring a projector and a recorder and equipment with me, and my background is in light and sound and psychoacoustics, and hear what you see what you hear, brainwave entrainment. So we always start with a 10 to 12 minute meditation using brainwave entrainment techniques and meditation, and then we move into the lecture, then go to lunch, then we work in the afternoon. That's what a typical day is like for us. So, and students they're interesting because, they'll go home Saturday and they'll come on Sunday morning and says, why was I so tired last night? I don't get why I was so tired. We didn't do anything. Well, spiritual work is not like any kind of work. Now, my dad used to own a shipyard in San Diego. We had the 4th largest shipyard. So if you're the boss's son and you ever work for your parents, you know, right? And so I work in the shipyard all day. I was a machine shop foreman, ran the cranes and the tugboats. And then I'd come home and I'd work on my house all night, then do the same thing all over again. Then I went into aerospace, and that was a different type of tired. But when I started doing spiritual work, the single most exhausting thing I do is flower readings. I'll do a flower reading for 10, and then I'm done for the night, because spiritual work is a whole different type of tired. So when you come on Saturday, I'm working on you before you even get there. And again, I'm the last guy to talk egotistically, but I've been doing this too long to cut corners and BS you. I mean, that's what happens. And so I'm constantly sending energy to the group. And so if you're very tired when you come in Sunday, it's because you didn't rest Saturday night. But there's certain things we have to do. Now, sometimes students will take Monday off because they will respect that they did spiritual work. It's one of the most intimate things you can do is to awaken yourself spiritually, right? I mean, the very fact that you're in this room says a lot about you, right? Your spiritual path, your dedication to unfold and awaken. That's huge. Any difficult questions for me? Any hard questions? Not like, why is there air or something?
You mentioned the divine feminine. Do you have a section on that, or do you feel that that's any kind of a new spin?
A whole section on it, yeah. Level 6 is called Protection versus Availability. I talk about how to be invisible. And I've even worked with martial artists like capoeira artists, how to move the second chakra in a way so that they don't seem to be there, and The feminine principle is using the power of the will to yield instead of push. So typically, we've had 13,000 years of the sacred masculine, which is mind. We're going into 13,000 years of the sacred feminine, which is heart. So now we are in the age of the feminine, but we must learn the tools of how to use the sacred feminine. This is one reason why you see so many women in positions of power, whether it's scientifically, academically, governmentally, industrially. And there's a very solid reason for that. It's because women embody the spiritual nature of what the sacred feminine represents. So, yes, we are externalizing more and more of an understanding of the sacred feminine, what it really means, even from a physics point of view, where they're now talking about implosion technologies versus the masculine explosion technologies. And the Dalai Lama himself, 2009 at the Vancouver Peace Summit, he said, the world will be saved by the Western woman. And he meant that two ways. He said women, Western women, but he also meant the sacred feminine. So, and to your point, 95% of my students are women. I wish I could get more guys to come. You don't think I've done the guy thing, working in a shipyard, and having final assembly responsibility for space launch vehicles, being at Cape Canaveral and Vandenberg several times, right on the launch pad, and then say, come on, we're fine. We're doing okay. But what happens is, let's say the woman is married to the guy, right? And then so she takes a healer's training, but then 95% of communication is not physical. It's consciousness. So say the woman takes a training and she changed her consciousness and goes home, and the same karma with her relationship is he is still affected by that. So, the only way you can really help another person if you take the spiritual path is by continuing to evolve yourself, because it offers the other person the opportunity to do so. So as you raise your vibration and do the spiritual work, people say, well, are you saying that if I take healer's training, I have to do healing? No, you can take it for spiritual self-improvement. You don't have to go and heal anybody, but if you apply what I'm teaching you over 2.5 years, you will definitely change. It's like if I was your coach and I sent you to a physical gym with workout equipment and you worked for 2.5 years, what do you think would happen to your body? Self-evident, right? Yeah, sacred feminine is very important to understand. We spend a whole level on it, level 6. Yeah.
When people go to the course over a period of 2.5 years, and I get that it's all about, well, it's just awakening. It's our own awakening.
It's you awakening yourself. Yes.
Which allows us then to access differently, to be able to be there for others.
Yeah.
Is it, some people have gifts that are different than other people's gifts. Maybe I'm wrong on that.
No, you're absolutely right. No, you're absolutely right.
Okay, and so does it happen that as we awaken or are on the path to the awakening, we're all in the same course together, but different aspects of us will develop differently as we go?
Just think of an orchard. Peach trees, apple trees, pear trees, all beautiful fruit trees, but they grow differently. They put forth different fruit. Another example would be, I tell students, I'm not here to get you to heal how I heal. I'm here to get you to heal how you heal. What does it mean? I'm a visual person, so I might, quote unquote, see the chakras, but maybe you hear them. My niece is a ER nurse in Hoag Hospital in, I think it's Orange County, 74-bed ER, right? But she comes, I know, she comes to me and she says, Uncle, that man didn't smell very good. She's not talking about odor. She's talking about clairolfactants. She psychically smells people. So what I tell my healer is, if you're kinetic, or if you're a telepathic healer, or if you are clairaudient, what if you're good at hearing or oriented towards that? You might hear the chakras. I want you to become strong in the way that you sense, what happens to some healers is they're kind of like this. Dr. J, where's the book? I don't see anything. Nothing's happening, and my abilities are not awakening. Where's the book? And I say, well, okay, just take a couple of imaginary steps back. And they go, oh, shit. So I have this one wonderful healer who just graduated, and she was just like that, and at about level 4, almost level 5, I continued to give this illustration of imagining you're stepping back from the tree, and she did it, and something went click, and then there's no stopping her. Now, this works for this, and this works for this, and this is really cool. It was so great to see how enthusiastic she was, because she got it, right? But sometimes healers are so, it's like I say, if you're trying hard, it's because you're trying too hard, right? And it's hard for us because we go, okay, things are not working, I'll try harder. Well, if you keep doing the same thing, what do you expect? So if someone like me comes along and goes, okay, step back, and if you apply, then you achieve results. Or sometimes healers say, well, I remember this one woman, I think it was on day 2, she says, I don't feel anything. Well, because I'm watching her heal, but she's not real grounded. And the type of grounding that I am talking about is not easy to explain, but what I did is I walked over to her and I grounded her, and then when she worked on the next person, she broke out into a big old sweat. I said, do you know why you're sweating? No. I said, because now the spiritual power is moving through your body and you're having a physical reaction in your body, but now you're grounded. But she didn't know what that meant. But that's when I'm working on my healers, I'm constantly making adjustments so that the spiritual power awakens in the safety way.
And differently for different people.
Very differently for
so
different.
Because if one of the chakras is whatever you use, dominant, like you have a dominant hand,
right,
then that person will act out of that chakra differently than someone else who has a dominant chakra.
Precisely.
A different one.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Like third chakra, main psychic ability is incisiveness, which is get to the point. What's the bottom line? What's the blunt answer? Or whereas the heart chakra is more like empathy and symmetry, which is the fullness of the purity of that which love represents, or how all things work together. Mm-hmm. So depending on how you're oriented, if this is your strong psychic ability, maybe you can't think so much what you think, but what everybody else thinks, because you're empathizing with that person so much, you think that's your thoughts. And a lot of empaths have this problem. They don't have a real strong sense of personal identity because they spend all their time feeling what everybody else feels. They're not doing it intentionally. It's just that the heart chakra is doing its thing so well, they assume, but they have to spend time developing healthy emotional boundaries, mm-hmm. not just for the boundary part, keep out, but a boundary does something else. A boundary gives you a yard, gives you a place to be yourself, right? So the heart chakra person, even though, in my opinion, they're only about 4% of the population, they have to spend time learning how to individuate their power. Or they use too much power. So like if the person starts to do the healing work, the average healer, when they start, they breathe shallow. So the upper part of your lungs hold about 1 pint of air. So when you're breathing shallow, you're usually just breathing here. And so when a healer starts healing, at first they don't know exactly what they're doing. They'll tend to use mostly heart chakra, which is fine if you're doing 1 healing a month, but I'm training you as if you're doing 5 healings a day. So I'll say things like breathe down below your belt line, feet on the floor, center your weight over your feet, and you're going to say, how many times is Dr. J going to tell me that over 2 years? Probably a couple hundred times, because what it does is it gets you to use all of your chakras in the healing. This is the safety way, and gets them all stimulated and gets them all going. So, yeah, over and over, I'm going to be looking
so
to
it's
help.
learning about yourself, too. As you
Very
go,
much.
Learning who
Yeah.
am I and how do I work differently than another person.
You said it better than I did. It's learning your way. Your way. But you go through fundamental foundational changes as you awaken, because your inner wisdom is now activated, coming forth. Yeah.
Which, by the way, is the meaning behind the Chinese symbol behind you, awaken to wholeness, truth, and beauty. I just happened to put that up about 10 minutes before. I didn't have any idea of it. So there was some synergy going on there.
All works together.
Yeah.
It all works together.
I think there's several here that are UCM ministers already. So how would this be different if you've gone through like a UCM ministry training? What would be kind of...
Well, ministerial training outside of platform work and decorum and understanding Fitzgerald's philosophy is to develop the minister's spiritual abilities. I have a church charter in Calgary, and I have my ministers do it the old-fashioned way. They're at 6:30 in the evening. They're doing healing ministry, and the end of the evening they're giving messages because I want them to learn how to do this. But there's two answers to your question because I really would like to answer it. One is we are in UCM, because I'm on the board, we are developing better sponsorship programs that have if there is such a word, a fuller or a more full acumen for our ministers to follow. And secondly, there really is no specified course to help the minister awaken, and I have mentioned to the board how we could include something like healer's training into a minister's training. Maybe not to become a healer as much as to awaken their spiritual power. But that is a chrysalis right now. It's still growing and evolving. We have a lot of work to do. Anybody that has ideas on this matter, you're welcome to share them with me. I welcome them. But you're right. And the emphasis is to train the ministers in the safety way so that they are very strong to handle what I call the exigencies, the little emergencies that are popping up more and more and more in our world through what I call entropy. Entropy is how everything is breaking down to a certain extent, whether it's in the medical profession, scientific, academic, industrial, sport. You see things falling apart because they're supposed to. Anything built on a faulty belief system must fall apart so it can regain a stronger foundation. And so that means if you adopt the position of being a minister, if you yourself are not strong, and someone takes a psychic relationship to you because you're spiritually representing yourself, it's going to be very difficult. Very hard on the minister because there's a lot of movement psychically that happens in a spiritualist ministry. And I think that a lot of ministers would do well to train much more in that area of their life. So, yeah, your question is very timely because it's something that's of great concern to the board. Very astute question.
The people were talking about life coaching along the way, and we do evolve through the changes, which is so plentiful right now. And sometimes you're basically guiding those people through the changes, letting go of the old and accepting the new, letting them have a vision of a future beyond what they knew in the past.
And that's the key word there, is guidance. So when you're doing healer's training, you're developing your own strength by, I'm saying, okay, now what's going on with that person and why? What can they do about it and how do they go about doing it? And you're saying, you want me to tell them what? Yeah, that's what I want you to tell them right now. Right now? Yeah. Gulp. But, if we don't develop this ability within ourselves to speak with a true knowledge or knowing of spirituality, as the people around us are struggling more, how can we give comfort if we don't develop ourselves first? Right? So that's something I think is very important. You have great questions. I very much appreciate that you asked them.
Well, yeah, because I'm really trying to decide if I can do this even energetically, and I'm still working full time in high tech, and I'm trying to understand
Well, also,
how I can do it
Well-
and feel like I can succeed.
well, but to expand your point is that sometimes when one person asks a question, another person in the room is going, yeah, I'd like to know that too. So you could very well intuitively be asking a question somebody else might have, but maybe didn't ask it or for whatever reason. So it's great that you do. Now, as far as taking the course is concerned, how do you know? So what's the best answer? Always trust what's in your heart. If your heart says yes, it's yes. I had been going to Chicago to attempt to start a healers training group. So in 2012, I did, in November 2012, started out with 12 students. I was in a yogini studio, and it turned immediately into a power struggle because I was in her studio, and she was a student. She didn't like that. So the group immediately went down to 6 people. But now I'm thinking, I live in San Diego, airfare to Chicago, rental car, da-da-da-da. But I asked my intuition, what do you say? You go and teach those people. So what do? If I don't live by faith, why should I teach you to do that? So one of my students in Chicago was a PhD neuroscientist who lived in New York. And he would fly to Chicago every 3 months to take my training. And if I hadn't taught that group, they would not have had the bond that they had because I wouldn't be facilitating that group. So to live in faith is not always what you want. But if your heart says, no, don't go anywhere near it, and you go, oh, but it's so sexy and I just really want to take the training. Well, but if it's no, it's no. If it's yes, then you do it. Either way, you will have trusted what's in your heart. You can't go wrong. You cannot go wrong. So that makes your decision easy in the intuitive part, but then the rational mind goes, yeah, but things cost money, and and the time allotment and the logistics and
Almost the time for the energy.
But
the other side of this is this course is running 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And you're not going to be starting another course?
I'll start
6
another
or 8
course.
months
I'll
or
start
a
another
year?
course probably next year
Next year.
here.
So if somebody did have a perturbation that they
Yeah.
had to, or they needed to.
Yeah, like next year I'm starting a group in north of Chicago. I'm starting another group in Calgary later this year. So I'm starting 3 or 4 groups every year because this year I'm graduating 4 groups, so I'm starting 4 groups.
But for this location here, you'll be starting another one, say, in a.
Probably.
Okay.
Probably. You're a little
So
ahead.
there'll be an
You're a little
opt-in process.
Yeah, you're a little ahead of me intuitively.
Well, I'm trying to see if that helps answer the question.
Yeah,
Because,
no, I get
if
it.
I can't take it right now, maybe I will next year. Or if I start now,
Yeah.
and my response was, well, can you afford to wait? Is the other side. In your time schedule, do you need the information now, or can you get started a year from now?
Or if you have to wait. Like you,
Yeah.
like you said, when you reach the level where you're no longer safe, you
Yeah.
have to stay at that level until you've built up your strength.
Yeah. And I do that with every student. I make an evaluation.
Mhm.
And makeups. What about makeups? I discourage them. I charge exactly the same as if you came for the full weekend. I'm willing to do a makeup of levels 1 and 2 because sometimes people can't make it. But after that, it's on a one-by-one, case-by-case basis. I will decide whether I'm going to do that or not. Because you miss the energy of the group consciousness in that weekend. So it's a commitment. I mean, may I?
I guess that begs the question, can makeups be done at another location?
You can do it a makeup at another location. So if you look at this here, this is the schedule for Canada for the different groups. This is the schedule for the U.S. for different groups. My point being, every weekend for 2 years, if you're in that group, you know what they all are, so you can look at your calendar and take it from there.
I was going to ask you if over the course of the years that you've been teaching this, has it evolved?
Yes.
And how has it evolved?
A couple of ways. I'm always getting new information, so I'm always changing the slides. The slides are never the same. if I get a new piece of science or something. So I teach by PowerPoint, and I have videos and audios embedded into the PowerPoint. Secondly, the students with every level seem to be more and more astute, and they hit the ground more and more powerfully with every succeeding year. So it's fascinating. Some of the, like this group in San Diego that just took their level 3 a weekend before this one, these women are going to work and making assessments, and there's a part of me looking at them and going, whoa, look at you. I'm delighted, right? But the students seem to be ever increasingly more adept with every passing year, which is fine with me. I mean, I just love doing this work, and I love watching the light go on in my students. Right? So it's very cool.
Do most of your students then go on to be healers as a full-time profession, or?
A lot of them do. A lot of them already have a healing profession. Like I have acupuncturists. I have one person who, he came to a flower reading in 2003 in October, and it was at my assistant's house. And we had finished, and I pointed to him. He was facing the other way. I said, "See that guy?" She says, "Yeah." I said, "You watch. We're going to become good friends." Well, it turns out he is a prominent periodontist, 30 years in the biz. And so then after that, he took the training, and then he started using it in his periodontic practice. You know, he wouldn't always tell someone like, "Now I will do spiritually," but yeah, he uses it. So there are people who are already in the healing professions who take my training. We are working to grant CEUs and become accredited. So that's an ongoing process.
It's not easy.
Granting the CEOs is our number one priority right now.
It's not easy.
We are approved healing provider by the, I keep messing up the title, the International Institute of Complementary Therapists, which means we are a recognized form of healing for you if you as a practitioner seek to get insurance for what you do. So you can apply through, with us, through us in that body to get insurance reduced rates. But, this type of healing needs that blessing of being legitimized, right? So that it can be taught on a much broader basis. So to that extent, I'm also going to be developing teachers that teach what I teach. So Deirdre's been with me 5 years, and so I'm going to allow her to teach a group in a place called Camrose, 180 miles north of Calgary, where I have a group up there. And September, I guess it's 26th and 27th, she's going to be teaching levels 4 and 5.
For her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she's ready. So I would not let someone teach unless I know they're ready to do so.
And what is the, usually when you start with a group, how many people are in the group?
It varies. A lot of my groups have about 7 people in them right now.
But how many would you allow to start a group? As many as want to show up? 30?
Well, it's an interesting question because I have had groups of 45 students. They graduated with 28. That was group 5. It graduated in 2005, I think it was. No, 2009, sorry. If I had 20 students, that would be a wonderful class size. More than that,
Yeah.
too many. There's too many.
Because I would hope that you would be watching around when
Yeah.
you ask, give them an assessment. You got to hear what we're saying.
Oh, I don't have to be looking at you to watch you.
Okay, yeah, but I just mean how many would be too many.
That's right.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't want a too large of a group because then it's too much. It's too hard on me,
Right.
So yeah. Right now, we have 6. And, 4 of them are in this room. Yeah. And then, Tom and Mary? They, Mary informed me about 3 months ago. Well, Tom and I are taking the training. That's great. Julia here, she signed up a long time ago. I'm doing this. Yes, already registered. So cool. So yeah, I'm very excited to come and teach. But like I said, if you have more questions, I like the really hard ones because those are the ones worth asking. Because if we can't tackle those, what are we doing?
How is the practice in between?
Usually students get together for about 2 hours. I like to use massage tables because it's tacit approval that healing's going to happen. The person gets on the table where they can rest and you do the healing work. I prefer 10 practice sessions between the 3 months it's not always possible. Sometimes geographically you can't. I've had people somewhere else, they have to Skype in. Like the guy from New York, he couldn't just come to Chicago when he wanted to, so he would Skype in. You do the best you can. And I make myself available too to Skype in with you and work with you. So what we technically do is we set the iPad or whatever up in the room so that I can see, and they either FaceTime or Skype so that I can watch physically what's going on. So in Calgary, I rent out a facility twice monthly. And then we just have anybody who wants to come and get a free healing, and then everybody from students to graduates can come and work. And so every twice a month in Calgary, we have, by far I have more students and graduates there than any place else, but we make the space available so you can practice. Here in San Jose, after day one, your names are all given to each other, so you can contact each other and set up your own times for what works best for you for practice work.
So we couldn't come here in between, potentially?
That's a good question, and I don't know. I would have to check it out because my home is in San Diego. It would require someone like Mike, who is a student, but also on the board of trustees, to open up the space. You guys could enter into that conversation. It is doable. It is doable. And the energy in this room is really good for doing healing work.
Yes, keys too.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, for the best.
Not quite sure why, but he hasn't.
Oh, so does that answer your question?
Because
Yeah.
he needs them.
Yeah.
He has them because he needs them.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
that's true. That's true. Believe me, I
Mike,
trust
hold
him.
out your hand.
He and I both worked, are you coming? Yeah, okay, good. So we communicate.
I'm trying to think of the schedule that everybody, they're trying to coordinate downtime. There's a lot of free time that this office is available after hours. And it's usually Tuesdays and Thursdays during the week that are busy. I don't know about the weekends, Mike. I'm throwing this out just kind of
I'm around.
to think about.
If
we
I'm
might
around,
outline.
yeah.
Well, not just
No,
for
just
you.
what the-
for
what
in
the
general.
room's
You talk
available.
to the board,
Oh,
Mary, say what times are available for.
Yeah, we accept donations for the use of the room anytime you come in here.
Yeah, but the scheduling,
Right.
for the scheduling aspect, it would help the students know what are,
We could lay out a schedule.
that would be
Have
good.
it as a regular day of the month, a regular day.
Yeah, or
every
just,
2
hey,
weeks or
we can do it
something.
this Saturday, there's nothing going on, like, why don't we could do that.
Mhm.
So we can,
That would
like
help
you said,
me,
email's gonna
especially
go
that would
around.
help me.
Yeah.
Right.
Just
Because
see
I
the
know how
calendar.
I'll get busy and.
I know it's
And I also have 2 sets of graduates in the Monterey area.
Oh, okay.
And some of them will come up. And like, for instance, one San Diego student lives in Walnut Creek, and she was just down this last weekend for San Diego Group 5. She's going to come on Sunday to work with us
Great.
on the 23rd of August. Her name's Kathy. So, in other words, there are other graduates who can come and practice with you. And then we do the best we can, How do you feel right now? How do you feel? Content, rested, restless?
In a quandary.
Yeah,
Quandary.
trying to make a decision.
Quandary, trying to make a decision. Quandaries are good. because it makes more alternatives available to you than you would otherwise think of. It's like confusion. All of a sudden, everything becomes possible. So how do you get out of a quandary? You walk in the direction that feels right. Whatever that sense is, that's the direction you walk, because it's like being lost in a forest. If you could look down on forests from space, you'd see all forests end somewhere, right? The ocean, the desert. And so it's not having to have a direction, it's following the direction you feel is the right direction. Because the right thing isn't always the logical thing. It's the effort that defines you.
I already received it.
I was just explaining it.
Yeah, I do have a basket out for donations tonight, but I leave that entirely up to you. Because I'm crappy at that part. That's why I have an assistant.
UCM will thank you if you leave a donation.
How do your graduates continue to grow after they graduate, usually?
They will take advanced courses from me. I do offer, like, earlier this year I taught a course on how to do flower readings. I taught a course on advanced mediumship where they did spirit communications and billet reading. We had 25 students that day, and they did 95 communications and billet readings. 95. So I do teach advanced courses, and then of course you can always ask me too if you have an interest in something that we could gather together and teach. I'm happy to do that as well.
What did you just say, though? I didn't understand that last thing. Billet?
A billet is where you would take an index card and you would write a question on it, fold it over, put a symbol on it, and then it gets put in a basket. And then the minister picks it up, not knowing whose it is, just only sees the question. But in this sense, under mediumship, when the minister gives the message, they have to bring through the spirit that's giving the message and say, this spirit says in answer to this question, not what you feel intuitively, but what you feel the spirit is saying. That's a billet reading.
Now, the techniques for that you train under, are they the Fitzgerald UCM handbook techniques, or is it a variation?
Not necessarily. Yeah.
I'm just curious, because we had some similar training, and some of it was very dogmatic. Do it, this is the way the book says, boom, boom, boom. And
I would,
other was...
Yeah, I would say similar.
And a lot of people have come from their own self-developed gifts.
Yeah.
And variations from that, and this is just one method. Is why I'm asking about Fitzgerald's methods is defined in the book. We're down a specific set of steps.
It's a variation.
There's a pen.
It's a variation of that. Okay.
Which is also to your point, is we each develop our own inner knower develops in the way that it does. You know, the pear is going to become a pear even if it starts out as a cell. It is still a pear, right? The apple, the orange, and so forth. So my point is to help you be so strong in your spiritual growth that you're not affected by all of the stuff that goes around. Of course, sometimes you are. Nothing that can change that. But the spiritual training is done in such a way so that you do awaken yourself. The levels are designed, as I said, I'm repeating for a reason. They're designed to help you awaken your chakras by having you focus on your chakras, which causes them to become stimulated. And as they stimulate, they begin to awaken. And as they awaken, your higher sense perceptions and your spiritual power begins to infuse more in your physical waking consciousness. It's major cool because... Well, because I get to watch it happen over 2 years, right, with different groups. And I go, oh, this is so cool. Watch this light go on in students. And we have fun doing it, you know. We have a healers training discussion page, which is a private, confidential page on Facebook. Only healers could belong to it, so nobody sees it but you, because I'm big on confidentiality and ethics in the healing. And so I will publish... pictures of each group. Like this last weekend, Group 5 in San Diego finished, so I put the pictures up. Also, I may pose questions on there for the healers, or some other healer may say, well, I was working on this person and their second chakra was very erratic and I got this, and so then the other healers have a chance to jump in and give their point of view. So it's a very good way of connecting one healer to another. Mm-hmm. There's about 135, I think, that are on that Facebook page now. So,
how fun.
Yeah.
Have you always had the ability to read chakras? Is something that, or did you see auras? Is this something you've had?
Yeah, when I was a little boy, I knew I was going to be a priest and a doctor. But when you're 5 years old, that doesn't make any sense. So then, 92, I started the ministry here, and then I also started a degree program. Get a doctorate in my dissertation. Dissertations are so funny because if it doesn't have enough syllables, it must not be a good dissertation, right? Psychophysiological effects of frequency octave related light and sound. Right. So 99, I got my degree in light and sound, and
sounds like singing when you say it.
yeah, it's well, it's it's the ministerial and it's the scientific, right, and balancing both to help the student have a very full experience. And of course, you get a syllabus, but you also get a recording of all of the lecture. You also get what I call a PowerPoint CD, which is where you get a copy of the PowerPoint that I used plus any videos that I show you, as long as they're public domain. And then you get them too. So you get a binder. And so when we were using CDs, your 2-inch binder, by the time you're through with the 18th level, your binder's this thick with syllabus and CDs and whatnot. But the CDs are necessary because, if you just come for a weekend, it's easy to the lecture, especially like level 3, I might burn 5 or 6 CDs of lecture. That's a lot. But level 3 is the chakras, and you got to know the basics of the chakras, and it takes a long time to fully lecture about what they are. But recording them, and then later on you slip them in your car or whatever, and at your own leisure you listen, and the lectures are segmented into 10-minute tracks, so you can just kind of, and then that way you know how it is. You hear it again, and it makes more sense. And your questions are also recorded. So I'll often put a microphone out in the group. So when you ask me a question, the question gets recorded, and then the answer, then the students go, oh yeah, when they asked that question. And then I encourage your questions too. That's very important, because when the Tibetans are seeking to evolve themselves, they do lots of meditation, but they also have what's called discourse. They discuss. Well, the Tibetans like to say, we can exchange knowledge. But through the discourse, the ideas are brought forth more fully, and then the other students get a more holistic experience than just only me talking. So I encourage you to ask me lots of questions. This book also now is published in Spanish, which is really trippy, seeing your book published in another language. I can relate as puedo relacionar.
That's for Barbara.
And you can get them as ebooks and Kindle books and all that stuff.
What's your sense of consciousness raising the whole Earth at now, the consciousness here, and going to the 5th dimension, from the 3rd to the 5th dimension?
For the planet, or?
Yeah, the planet ascending, and as we ascend.
My personal opinion, we are successfully entering the golden age. Like birth, there's some birth pains, some labor pains, but I see very successful, especially when I see my students are very earnest and diligent in their work. They have become very mature. Although, again, because we're a group of spiritualists, I can be blunt with you. I have this one group of students, Calgary group number 14. And this is the 14th group I've taught, so it's easy for me if I just number them. And there's 5 students in that group, and And of those 5 students, they've all had a lifetime not on this planet within the past 5 lifetimes. So let's say they've had 6 lifetimes recently. One of those wasn't here. It was on another planet. So I have to teach them differently. Now, if I was to say this to some other group, they'd look at me and go, but with you, I'm okay. But I have to teach them differently. This group 5 in San Diego that's going to graduate November 1st, these women are all very mature spiritually. So I have to teach them differently than I would in a different group. So what I do is I look at the group that I'm teaching, because we collectively come together in a unanimity of purpose. There's a reason why these healers are in this group at this time. Same thing here as anywhere else. So then I tailor the way I teach so that it has the maximum effect for you. Yeah. It's weird though when you tell healers, well, you weren't all here in a past lifetime. Some of them are like, what? But, we're living in an amazing age where we have the opportunity to accomplish tremendous spiritual growth because of all these planetary, galactic, and solar alignments, and flying through the photon belt and flying through magnetic fields, and it's a wonderful opportunity to not have to have lifetimes repeat, and to continue to let go of the illusion that causes all this suffering. That's one of my things, is I don't like all this unnecessary suffering. So I'm thinking, well, I think I have a way of teaching metaphysics that's useful. So that's why you see me doing this.
Hence comes some of the resistance from the establishment, where
oh yeah,
people put themselves in the middle, in positions of power.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the greater the change, that would imply that there's going to be a greater amount of resistance and people responding to change with fear and anxiety. And,
right. Dismissiveness and derision and all of that. But, I've had lifetimes of doing that already. So this ain't my first rodeo.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, I know what you mean. But that doesn't stop us from doing our work. So, we work hard not to tell someone else what to do, but we lead by example, right? And this is the emanation of the soul quality as you awaken yourself. It's unmistakable. As a person is awakened, it's a beacon. Everybody is naked. Everybody sees everybody's chakras. It's just not an optical thing. But we all see each other's chakras all the time. Doesn't matter whether you believe it or not. It's like saying, I don't believe in gravity. Doesn't matter. You're going to stick to the planet anyway. So if a person comes into the room who is a very awakened person, you will tend to shift your biometrics to match that person in the room. Brainwave entrainment, heart rate variability, different types of markers. Because we tend to arise to that level. We feel it, we know it psychically. So that's why it's a good idea, like if Dalai Lama comes to town or something, you hang out with people who are very spiritually awakened, and that's that representation through relationship that happens, right? You're taking a psychic relationship to what that person represents as an evolved being. Hence, you grow because you're hanging out in that energy.
I was lucky enough to go for 4 or 5 days when he was at the shoreline, when there were maybe 500 people.
The Heart of Sutra trainings.
And then on the weekend, of course, there was 18,000 people showing up. But during the week, it was magnificent.
The Mayans have an interesting culture in that they have the only calendrical system we know of that's based on consciousness. when a certain consciousness is supposed to show up. So typically pyramids like the ones in the Petén Reserve, that is Tikal or Palenque or Chichen Itza, are built in 9 levels. And each level is an underworld of the time. The longest Mayan calendar is 16.4 billion years. Shortest one is 1 year. All 9 calendars ended on December 21st, 2012, and the calendars are related to when a certain consciousness should show up. Wonderful book written by Barbara Hand Clow called The Mayan Code. She actually put on one column when the Mayans say a certain type of consciousness show up, and when science says, Earth was formed, then the amoebas, then the dinosaurs, Cro-Magnon, Homo sapiens, and they match pretty good. So the Mayans were you. The word Mayan comes from Mayab, which means the chosen ones. It means you choose yourself. And so Mayan is a consciousness statement. It doesn't mean you're a race of people who come from Central America. It means you are the Mayans who have chosen yourself to awaken in the era of inner transformation, which is this era. So it is the conscious co-creative collaboration this lifetime for you to awaken yourself. That's why you're sitting in this room, because you've made a conscious choice to empower yourself. Doesn't matter whether you take healer's training or not. It matters whether you follow what's in your heart. That's what matters. That's all any teacher would ever want for you, is to follow what's in your heart. And to exceed the teacher's teachings, always. Always.
So is that before or after the serpent bites?
During.
Ah.
There's the serpent, only it's the dragon.
Yeah. And the dragon is a very wise serpent, awakened. Often in mythology, smarter than a human being and wiser. In martial arts, the initial martial artist becomes tiger, but eventually all tigers become dragons with wisdom. So we have intellect or knowledge, and knowledge over time can become wisdom with experience. But wisdom can become realization with awareness. Awareness means not limited to time or space. So as you awaken your chakras, you awaken that part of you in this physical mind that's not limited to time or space. And so from wisdom you become realized here. It's much more than just wisdom. You feel complete? Any more questions?
This one, last one. You mentioned, the Mayan calendar. I knew it ended in 2012. But so is that?
Did you miss the end of the world then?
Pardon?
Did you miss the end of the world? Yeah.
Was that then a new consciousness? Was that the end of the old consciousness? Is
No.
that what we're-
No, it's not an event, it's a process. It's December 21st, 2012 is the same thing as December 31st going to January 1st. It's just simply movement. The Mayan calendar really is not physically represented. The ones we look at are either Aztec calendars or a iconographic view of the 20-day signs. But typically the sun, Ahau, is moved around a cycle of 5,115 years and 26,000 years simultaneously. But then it just starts again immediately. It's like watching your watch, and it ticks off the seconds and it just keeps right on going. But what it means is, process means an era of inner transformation. So if you look at the the window of opportunity, actually really started becoming powerful because there's a 37-year window from 1980 through 2017 where our solar system is in alignment with the galactic center. But even after that, we're still in this Dwapara Yuga, which is a cycle of time where the solar system is going through a highly charged part of our galaxy. So biologically and esoterically, the Mayans are saying you are becoming another yourself. Kukulkan, the feathered serpent, half Quetzal bird, is shedding its skin. You're shedding your ego so you can expand and become another yourself. But this is the era of inner transformation where we have the opportunity to go further, farther, faster in a single lifetime than in several lifetimes. Because that's why things like this cell phone exist. This is a computer that has a subroutine called a phone, because our consciousness has externalized the means to bring all of the greatest teachings to us. We no longer have to travel to get it. We can bring it to us, because this is what our consciousness has created. Now, the point is, what do we do about this? Right? It's an opportunity.
We put it under our pillows and absorb all the knowledge.
Oh, Edgar Casey, right? I have absorbed my cell phone. I know. What's that square thing on your cheek? Oh, that was my phone. I slept on it.
Yeah.
Now it's in my cheek. I get free long distance. How about we do a closing meditation?
Good idea.
Breath in and breath out. Breath in and breath out. Feel the presence of your guides, masters, angels, archangels, guardians, and protectors, the masters of loving wisdom, those that have come this way before and who are yet here again. Accept our salutations and our acknowledgement of your presence in our lives. Accept the awakening of our being to the truth of our purpose, that those that have come this way before have paved the way through us, to us, by right action and right behavior. And in this moment, we have become the chosen ones. We have chosen ourselves in the arms, the mind, and the heart of the Creator as one, to awaken to the true self. For in the clear sky there are no clouds. We have moved beyond our thoughts to that place within our being where we know the truth, and in the power of the truth we stand. In the power of the light we stand. In the power of the pureness and the divinity of that which love represents, we stand, whole and complete, whole and complete. And breath in, and breath out, and breath in very gently, and breath out, feeling a great sense of inner gratitude, contentment, and peace. And when you feel the moment is right, open your eyes.